welcome to The Good, the Bad and the Worst, a podcast where we analyse film series and decide which film belongs in the caterpillar room. I'm your host, Griner, and joining me today...
I am Mrs. Nesbits.
And I am Luke Morgan. And don't worry, guys, in just a few hours, you'll be sitting around a campfire with Andy, making delicious hot schmoes.
Well, of course, we're talking about the Toy Story series. Guys, how did we feel rewatching Toy Stories?
Toy Story is really good. I loved it. I enjoyed it. It's, I forget sort of how definitive they were to childhood in so many ways, and like being a millennial, how that rise of Pixar is really sort of intertwined with my own childhood and adolescence. And so watching it again was just like, I have this, I think anyone who sort of did see them when they were young has that huge nostalgia for them and just gets so much from them. And watching them again, they also sort of speak to that thing of Pixar where they're not just kids' films. There's a reason why they're so endearing and they've lasted so long, is that they're just phenomenally well-made films. They're really funny. They're really touching. They're really entertaining. They're really easy to watch. Wayne, towards the end, it gets a bit different, but they're great films. The first one especially, just watching it again is always just like this treat. It like brings back so many memories and just so many like associations in my head. But it was awesome. I loved it.
Yeah. So, obviously I nominated this for this podcast. Toy Story has always been one of my favorite series. I'm a big Pixar fan. I know when I started dating my wife, she never watched any animation movies. Like, she assumed Pixar films were for kids, and I sort of opened her world to this sort of stuff, and she really enjoys them as well. But Toy Stories, I know, right? Toy Stories always had like a special place in my heart. And I remember in the early days of Facebook when Toy Story 3 was coming out, all the memes of like, I'll be pushing out the little kids out of the way because I want to go see Toy Story 3 and I'm an adult sort of thing. And those memes were everywhere on Facebook. And it was just, I don't know, especially the three films, it's such a good trilogy and like such an emotional, it has such a special spot in my heart. Like, there is no time that I've watched Toy Story 3 and not cried at the end. I cry every single time at the end of Toy Story 3. And, I mean, who doesn't love Tom Hanks? Tom Hanks is lovable as Woody. It's such a great cast. The music's great. A lot of fun ideas that they do with it and a lot of deeper meanings behind the actual story. So I think Toy Story was one of the first films I went and saw at the cinema when I was a kid, and Toy Story 4 was the first film both my kids went and saw at the cinema, which was like kind of special. And yeah, I love these films.
I don't have that much nostalgia for these movies. Like, I'm definitely about the right age for them, but I feel like Toy Story wasn't something I watched as a kid. I definitely remember seeing Toy Story 2 in the cinema, so I must have seen Toy Story 1 before that. But I don't know, it's just not a movie that I have a huge emotional connection to as a child. But I still really enjoyed watching these movies. Obviously, they are classic films. The effect that Toy Story 1 had on the film industry, and particularly animated films, is immense. Like, animated films were not the same after Toy Story 1.
Yeah.
It's the first feature-length animated film.
Yeah, computer animated film. Yeah.
Pretty much spelled the doom of like hand-drawn animation for probably 20 years until there was one film that returned to it and was entirely hand-animated again. I can't remember. I think it was A Princess and the Frog.
Yeah, it's pretty recent. I mean, if you're going to say bad things about Emperor's New Groove, I won't hear it. But
was that entirely like hand-drawn, or was it? Because I think even with the films that were hand-drawn styled, they were aided in with computer generation.
Sure.
Whereas before Toy Story, there was still a lot of just like pure hand-drawn stuff. So it really did become the standard of like, we don't need to do that anymore. We do films this way.
Yeah. Yeah, and I really enjoyed this rewatch. I don't know. We'll get into my opinion on how good or bad they got towards the end, but we'll come to that in a second. I don't want to spoil things, but I don't know. I feel like I have a bad opinion that people are going to dislike, but I feel like I'm also becoming the villain of this podcast, too. So maybe that's just where we're at.
I'm the protagonist.
About you all along, so
you can be the antagonist.
And Luke's the funny guy.
Yeah, Luke, you can be
Yay!
You're Robin Pattinson. That's fine.
I'm cool with that, man. I'm cool with that. I love him in Twilight.
I think it's probably going to be obvious, but we feel this movie deserves to be a trilogy.
I think it does. There's a strong argument to be made that it deserves to be a trilogy, not a quadrilogy. Now, 4 is really good. I don't want to understate that. I think in a lot of ways 4 is the funniest film, and there's an argument to be made that it's the most entertaining, even. But I think thematically, it really can end 3 and be complete. 4 does seem like a bit of I think, and it's weird considering they came out. See, 3 came out like 11 years or something after the second one, and then this came out, I think, 9 or 10 years afterwards. So there's these huge gaps between them. And so I kind of wonder if maybe Toy Story works as literally just a check-in of all life, where it's like, you're in your 30s now, okay, here's Toy Story 5, you're in your 40s, here's Toy Story 6. And there's probably films to be made there, but I don't think it needs to be that way. It can function really well as a tight trilogy, but money speaks.
So I'll go on that, because when I originally brought this podcast to the table last fortnight, I pitched it as the original trilogy, and you sort of argued against that, Conan, because you said no, 3 sort of started up again, and then 4 needs to be included with that. So I think you misremembered it, because I do believe the first 3 are a perfect beginning to an end, like arc that it ends, and then 4th is this new rebirth where they're like, let's take it in this direction and do it. Tell this story and everything like that. So, what do you think?
I don't think it's a rebirth or I feel like you can use that to movies that have 6 or 7. Like you could say, I don't know, Fast and Furious trilogy is really only the first 3. The rest of them don't count because they don't capture the true essence of what Fast and Furious was or something. And so, even though I think thematically they hit it on the head, like it's still the creative team behind it. There's not this huge leap or change, and there's enough of a gap that this isn't kind of this weird standalone reboot. It's still the same continuation. That I don't think this to do it just as a trilogy would be to ignore to ignore part of the series. It'd be to do Spider-Man 1 and 2 and say Spider-Man 3 just doesn't exist when it does, and you've got to address that.
I think to me 4 was like an epilogue. Like 4 is getting closure on characters that we don't really get in 3. Like 3 still ends kind of open-ended. It's still kind of this happy ending, even though it's not the ending we necessarily want. We'd still love for all the toys to be loved by Andy, but they're moving on to this new home. But 4 really does give us closure on a lot of characters, not all of them, but it does give us closure on some of those characters. To me, it's like an epilogue.
I was going to say that. I was going to say like an epilogue. That's how I view 4. But man, I disagree, because one of my notes about this whole thing was I think 3 ended perfectly. And 4 did not. I like the ending of 4, but I don't think it had the same amount of closure for me as 3 did. Like 3, I was like, wow, what an emotional journey I've been on. That's my life summed up now. Like, farewell. Like, this is a great ending point for this series. But at the end of 4, I was like, oh, okay, really? That's what they're going to do? They're going to now separate here? And I like it, and I like the story it tells with Woody finally having this character moment as opposed to what he's been in the past. But I don't know, the ending didn't feel as much as a finale ending as 3 did, in my opinion.
Depends on who you're looking for closure on. So I think you could almost call the trilogy like the Andy arc. Like, this is the story about Andy and his toys, but it's not. It doesn't close. It doesn't give you closure on the toys. The toys go on to have a life. Like, I don't think to me, you don't get that closure. You get closure on what happens between the toys and Andy, but I don't think you get the closure on, like, is Woody going to be the most popular toy at this new house? Like, you don't know that. Is the same dynamic going to continue at this new house? Like, we really don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah, that's true.
No, I get that. But I do feel like 4, in my opinion, 4 feels very separate. I think 4, more than any of the others sort of had this theme of sticking with this main cast of characters, and then every now and again a new one sprinkled in here or there. 4 was basically a new cast of characters. Like Rex, Mr. Potato Head and all that, Jesse, they barely play a role in 4. Like, you don't, every now and again I'm like, oh wow, there's Mr. Potato Head. He looks great, and with the new graphics and everything like that. And I forgot what he looks like with these new animations because you haven't seen him in an hour. It doesn't have that original full ensemble cast, which isn't a bad point. Like, I love all the new characters they do, but they focus way more on Gabby, the bunny, and the chicken. Bringing back Bo Peep and everything like that. It feels different. But I agree. I definitely can look at it as like the Andy arc, and then now stretching out the MCU to the what Woody's doing and everything like that. But
Well, the thing is, the next Toy Story movie is going to be based about Buzz Lightyear, and I think they would have done better to have this as Woody's story, whatever it is, whatever they want to call it. Like the next movie is called Lightyear, I think. They could have done something similar and called this, Woody's story or whatever they want to call it, right? Because you're right, it's not like the other Toy Story movies. It doesn't have the same cast. You miss a lot of the characters that are big parts of the other films.
See, I think you nailed it. I don't think this needs to be 4. Like, this could have just been Toy Story. There's a snake in my boot. I don't know. Like,
I've got a Woody.
Exactly. There we go. Perfect. Nailed it.
That's a parody you find on
Copyright.
other websites.
Did I watch the wrong film? Before we get too deep into the weeds, let's come to our favourite category. Dennis Franz, the man, the myth, the legend. Who do we put him? Whose skin do we put him in for this movie? There's so many choices to me. Mr. Potato Head is the obvious one to me as well.
Yeah, it's him or even Porco, the piggy bank.
Yeah,
I think he could do well there, or maybe Andy's mum. To kind of fit in with the bizarre CG of the first one, just this very unsettling. I'd like that. Him going to Pizza Planet.
I have him down as either the Chicken Man in number 2, who is played by Newman from Seinfeld, who does great. But I could also see him as Sid in the first one. Evil child. Man, that was a scary looking animal, wasn't it?
Yeah. Actually, or Slinky. He could do a good Slinky.
There's a lot of voices in this movie who I'm like, I know that guy, and then I look it up and I'm like, I don't really know that guy. But
yeah,
I feel like Dennis Franz, to me, really fits that role.
I think he could do impersonations of all the toys, and it wouldn't be jarring. It'd be like, I like this. That's
the same Mr. Potato Head from the other movies, right?
Yeah, and that's obviously part of the fact that it's like the third and even the third to an extent and the fourth definitely feel kind of disjointed from the original one. Like real world factors happen, like Don Rickles passed away, unfortunately, so you can't have Mr. Potato Head doing anything except it's like Leia in Star Wars, right? They have these recycled scenes that don't really fit in, and they're like, oh, that's how she's in these films. And he has like 2 or 3 lines, and they're just very generic recordings they could have fished out from anywhere. And it's like so. Unfortunately, you can't have a huge arc like in Toy Story 3 with Mr. Potato Head. And
I didn't realize that.
Yeah, no, he died before it was made, so he's not in it at all. That's kind of why his character does nothing. And even after number 3, obviously the group is brought down to a very core like select, and they kind of run through that where they're like, these guys got given away at this thing, they got taken away to there. So you've only got a handful of the original toys in number 3. Yeah, and so it makes sense. Almost, it's like being a series that's all concerned with aging and growing up and letting go, that you need to get rid of the original gang. You can't just keep having 15 of the same people, because that would contradict what it's about, really. So it's fitting to have them kind of getting slimmer and slimmer each time, and you focus on a handful of stronger relationships than just having 30 different voices all for comedy banter.
With 3, that does make sense thematically, that Andy's growing up and he's gotten rid of all the outcast toys that he doesn't need, like Etch-a-Sketch. No one has Etch-a-Sketch. But in 4, the characters are there. They're just in the background in the RV, not doing much.
Yeah, that's right. But it also follows the arc of what real toys are like, right? Like everybody's lost a toy. Like your toy box doesn't look the same at every age. You lose toys over time. They disappear. And this is an interesting look into how do those toys feel about that happening. But
it's true.
Yeah.
There are a lot of existential questions that these films raise. Like,
oh boy.
Yeah,
I think the fourth is the worst one for it, but we might get into that. Let's do it. What's the worst film? Who wants to go first?
Shot not.
Do you want me to give my controversial opinion?
Please do.
I'm sure I'm not going to get in. I'm not going to get any support on this, but rewatching these, and particularly it depends on, like, it's hard to how do you judge something, right? Do I judge it through how much I enjoyed it watching it this time, or do I judge it by how much I enjoyed watching it every time that I've watched it? But for me, this time, I wanted to give the worst film to Toy Story 1.
Wow.
I don't know if I landed on that in the end, but I really feel like it has aged the worst.
I think you'll find all of our listeners drop off at this point and just go, I'm done.
No, they're going to stay on in anger at me, and that's okay. And look, I don't want to say number 1 is the worst, because I totally understand how important this film is to the film industry as a whole. And I do understand that, graphics age. Like that's just how it's going to be if you do something. Even like hand-drawn animation graphics, as beautiful as some of those really old Disney movies are, they don't look as nice as the more modern ones. Like they just don't. You can have nostalgia about it, but yes, you can definitely see the cracks. You can definitely see the the scenes where this character was really drawn off model and looks really strange. And I just think, like, watching it this time for me, Toy Story 1 really shows its age in that way. And I think because they were pushing so many boundaries with the animation, that I think the comedy's not as tight, the story's not as interesting as what they go on to do in 2, 3, and 4. But nobody can say Toy Story 1 is the worst movie. Like, you just can't do it. I will be hung in the street. Like, I do understand that. But for me, as I watch these movies, I enjoyed 2 more than 1, I enjoyed 3 more than 2 and 1, and I enjoyed 4 more than the other 3.
Holy crap.
Yeah. So I think I would give it to 2 as the worst, just because I think I don't know. I don't even think it's a bad story. I think it's really good, but I do think it's a bit slight. Like, if you look into the history of them making it, it was going to be a direct-to-DVD movie, and that's what it felt like to me, a bit. Like, it felt like a direct-to-DVD movie. It didn't feel as groundbreaking as the first one, which, of course, it can't. And it didn't feel as big and as good as 3 and 4 to me.
So, and that's the thing. I'll just touch on a note you said there. I think these films are like such a good example to look at and watch them from beginning to end to see how far animations come. Because, man, 4 looks great. And, like, some of the stuff in that. And then watching number 1, like, compare the dog in number 1 to the cat in number 4. It's quite remarkable. The dog's horrifying to look at.
Yeah, that opening scene where it's raining in the 4th one is stunning. It's amazing what they could do, and it's like, man, that is chalk and cheese compared to the first.
So I came into this. I honestly couldn't decide. I was like, I don't know which one's those. Like, they're all really good. Honestly, I was coming in to say number 1.
What's happening right now?
Or 2. I wanted to hear everyone else's opinions first because I was coming in with 1 or 2. 1, I don't know if it's the nostalgia goggles that has it over 2 for me. I do have a lot of issues with 2, and when I look at my notes for all 4 of them, 2, I didn't have... Okay, I'll be honest. 4, all 4 of them I had some notes on. 2, I had 1 note, which was Jessie's kind of annoying.
Mm-hmm.
I enjoy her story, how she's left behind by Emily. That's heartbreaking, her story, why she has this thing. But she's kind of annoying. She's very eccentric, and just I don't like that, and she annoys me. I don't like Stinky. People. I don't like Stinky Pete, the prospector. And yeah, I don't know. 2 would be my safe bet, but I'm willing to go with number 1. Surprisingly, and I wasn't expecting that coming in, but. In my opinion, 3 and 4 are the top of the series. We can debate which one's the best out of those 2, but it's definitely between 2 and 1, which I think is the worst.
I don't. There is no way we're having an opinion in this podcast that Toy Story 1 is the worst one.
And I won't go there. I won't go there either. But I just wanted to point out that maybe it hasn't aged the best.
So I think I was surprised rewatching it with how well the animation how well the animation stands up. There are obviously a lot of problems in terms of things like the dog. Some of the character models, like the people when they move, are really clunky. But I think overall, if you were to just take simple scenes or basic things, like there's not a huge difference in the parts of it. It's, I don't know. You see in the 3rd and the 4th, there's a lot more physical comedy where the toys are doing lots of tricks and like dancing between things and leaping off stuff because they couldn't do that with the first couple. It was a lot more basic and stilted. And so that's where, when things like that happen, you really start to see, this is where these surpass the earlier ones. But in just a basic scene of them talking or doing whatever, like, there's not a huge... I was shocked to find there wasn't that huge of a difference.
And I think that's the genius of choosing to do this first animated film about toys. Like, toys are stilted and they look plasticky. They don't have to look like real people. And they choose to barely show real people, except for having Sid in there probably too much and the dog in there too much. Like, they choose to have these people out of frame 99% of the time.
Yeah.
Like, they have it in a kid's room with a nice flat floor. They're not running over weird terrain or anything like this. Like, they make a lot of choices that are so smart when you're making something computer animated to just keep that that overhead down, and that's why it does stand up as well as it does.
It's true, and you said that there's that great thing they pointed out that Andy's friends are all just models of Andy. So it's like no one's going to be looking. Yeah, no one's going to be looking at these kids, and they're literally the same character model you the whole time, and that's part of the fun. It's like no, and it's kind of weird when you see like you never actually see the mum's face in the first one. I don't think, or like you might see like half bits of it, and it's very strange how they did that. But you're right. I think it's just to avoid having to actually properly animate anything and save themselves a lot of time.
She looks like a grown-up Andy. She's just Andy on a taller body.
Yeah, but, yeah.
And they said the only reason there's not a dad is because they couldn't afford it, and they didn't want to do two adult characters walking around. They were just like, well, no. So he's fatherless because it was going to be complicated to have another adult walking around.
Because that's one of my biggest questions. She seems well adjusted for, having a son and a newborn daughter and is moving around and stuff. I'm like, damn, what happened in Andy's past?
She's a strong, independent woman. She don't need no man. But that, honestly, like, we can say the thing about the dog. The dog stands out as bad because it's obvious. Like, but I agree with Conan. I think it looks really good considering it came out in the 90s and it's the first, one of its kind. It looks really good, and the toys themselves, I remember when I first sat down to watch it again, I was like, they look good. And then it's not till you get through the series, you're like, oh, wow, these look really good. And it sort of glaringly shows what one looks like. But it really holds up, I find, what the toys look like. And they do it very smart to not show many flaws, which is why it's weird that they focus on the dog and Sid a bit too much, but I understand why they have to do that with Sid.
Yeah, I mean, you compare it to like Marvel films that are obviously the gold standard of CGI, and it's like Marvel films that are 10 years old look like crap, and it's even film like Age of Ultron looks really, really bad, and that's not an old film. So for this film to be 25 years old and still look pretty good, you guys are both wrong. It looks in any scene where there's stuff happening in that film, the CGI looks awful.
It definitely, like, I agree. I'll agree. It stands out. Like, it's definitely. I mean,
like if you watch that film now, you'll be like, "What the hell?" Like. You'll just see the problem. Like, that looks bad. That looks clunky. It looks really bad. Whereas in Toy Story, you do not see these things unless you're looking at, that actually does look a bit strange. And so, like, for them to sort of have it at that standard so early on is remarkable.
Yeah, honestly, I'll put my vote on 2 because just thinking about 1, I do think there's a lot of funny lines in number 1. I really like the whole arc of like Buzz Lightyear coming in. And Woody watching Andy's room get taken over from cowboy stuff to space stuff and slowly getting replaced. I love the use of music in it. I have a really nostalgic thing for Pizza Planet and the whole vibe of the green aliens. And I really wanted to go there when I was a kid. That was like a dream fantasy location to go to was Pizza Planet. I have nostalgia for the games, like on the Game Boy and everything like that. It's I like everything they do with Sid in his room and everything. There's a lot of good humour there. I like Buzz just being despondent. Mrs. Nesbit, like you said, with a tea, and Woody holding his arm through the window like, hey guys, he's fine, fine. Which apparently was improvised from Tom Hanks. He came up with like that idea to do that sort of thing with Buzz's thing. It's really fun. And I like that the other toys...
They have bloopers.
But yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I don't like the bloopers. I don't know why. That's one of my main points against Toy Story 2. I think that was genius at the
time. I think that was genius at the time,
but I do like in Toy Story 1 that all the other toys are just like, no, screw you, Woody. You toss Buzz out the window. No, you can rot. You can rot over there. We'll leave Woody to die because he did that. Especially Mr. Potato Head. He doesn't give any shit.
It's brutal tribalism in Andy's room. Like, the speed by which they're going to sacrifice people and it's like, you are our new king now. It's disconcerting. I just saying to say on that.
I'll just say one question. Like, there's a few lines that Buzz says in number 1. I love you are a strange, tiny little man, and you have my pity, or something like that. It's a great line by Buzz, and I really like his whole. I just like his whole shtick about. He thinks he's a toy. But the main question I have with number 1 is, if Buzz Lightyear doesn't know he's a toy, then why does he freeze every time a human walks in?
More existential questions, yeah.
It is a question that goes around. I have seen the idea that it's a reflex that all toys have. Don't know whether I believe it.
But then obviously Woody he breaks it pretty pretty easily, and they all do when they attack Sid. They're just like, all right,
And they want to.
Yeah, and so it does seem like, are they able to just, or is it, I don't know, this primal calling in all toys? They're like, they have to just do it, and they're like, if I don't do this, I will have nightmares for the rest of my days. I think Toy Story 1 definitely has the best quotes out of all. Like, all the good quotes, I think, really come from number 1. You got that. I still think that scene where the shark pops out of the hat. He's like,
Hey, who's got my hat?
Look, I'm Woody. Howdy, howdy, howdy.
Give me that.
I still use that all the time. Like, Buzz's dialogue is always really fun. Like, "You are a toy" is so well known. Is so like common.
The little green aliens all talking together. Yeah.
Yeah, like the banter in number 1. Yeah, saying the. Banner in number 1 is really, really well done, and like, so it's one of those things where they go over as your head as a kid, but it's just kind of funny, and it's like there's lots of little jokes, but there's also like some of Ham's lines are so freaking good. And it's like him and Mr. Potato Head, their back and forth is great.
And there seems to be no sign of intelligent life anywhere.
Hello?
Yeah,
like that's a meme still to this day. That gets used all the time.
That's the thing. Number 1 is just based on that alone. I think you can't, like, the dialogue never gets better.
So
right, so we know that number 1 is not your worst film, Conan. What is your vote for the worst film?
I was talking to my sister before I did this, and she was like, "You can't say number 2 because number 2 has probably the most poignant emotional moment in any of the films, which is Jesse's song, except for maybe number 3's Furnace." But that scene is heart wrenching, and that song is beautiful. You got Sarah McLachlan playing. You've just got all the feelings, like, and so I don't want to say number 2, but I sort of have to. Otherwise,
do you agree, or would you have another film that you'd put up over?
The only other argument would be number 4, but I think, like, when I think about it, I'm like, I would much rather watch number 2 to number 4, and for all those reasons you stated.
You mean
like,
the
number
other way
2,
around?
Yeah, sorry, I'd rather watch number 4 than number 2.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So I kind of don't want to say number 2 just for the sake of argument, but I also feel like I have to. My toy reflex saying I must, because it does feel a bit. It feels more direct to sequel, like you were saying. It feels a bit less. Doesn't have that same Pixar quality standard that sort of became their thing. And outside of those moments that are phenomenal, like the chicken guy's annoying. The whole sort of the third act where they're in the airport isn't that good, and
No.
it's lacking a lot of the emotion. Besides those handful of moments, it's lacking some of the other huge things that the rest of the films have. So 2 would have to be my vote.
As much as I love Kelsey Grammer, do you guys feel like he's the worst bad guy in quotes? I guess 'cause he's not necessarily the bad guy, but he's the one with the heel turn, right? But I feel like all the others. But I mean, there's not really a character like that in the first one, but like Lotso's better in the third one.
Lotso's great. I love Lotso. Yeah, I didn't realize it was Kelsey Grammer that played Stinky Pete.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do think he's the weakest of the ones. Obviously, number 1, the closest thing you can say is Sid. And
Sid's obviously
Woody's
a
ego.
direct villain. Woody was the enemy. Wow.
Woody was apparently a jerk. Like, they wrote, when they originally did Toy Story, Woody was going to be a complete arsehole, as in abusive to Slinky Dog, everything. And then it was going to be this big turnaround where he went from selfish to being selfless by the end. But then they realised that probably wouldn't go well with a Disney film. So
Yeah, that would have been uncomfortable.
yeah,
I feel like they kind of will fit the same mold in a lot of ways, though. Kelsey Grammer's Stinky Pete is a lot more understated, where he is kind of friendly, and you feel pretty sorry for him. Whereas Lotso, I think, is much more like that, not cliche, but like that typical sort of overly nice, and it's like, all right, there's obviously something wrong here. And then when he turns around, it's like, yeah, that was... Like, his betrayal doesn't come out of nowhere. It doesn't feel like a twist at all. At least when I saw it, I was like, he's clearly evil. It all seems way too nice. And then, was it Yo Gabby or...
Gabby. And she,
Gabby?
she doesn't have a turn. Oh, she does have a turn that's the opposite way, and she's obviously, I don't know, to me, she's the creepiest, though. That the whole antique story is the creepiest thing.
Oh, definitely the most unsettling.
the dolls are the creepiest, man.
Yeah.
It's so creepy.
Yeah.
But I think they all kind of follow the same thing. So I didn't have any issue with Stinky Pete. I thought he was good because he feels genuine in what he's trying to do. And it's not malicious. It's kind of like, it is his philosophy, though, that grates up against it and it has to change. Whereas Lotso was almost more like, I'm a villain. You guys have to be, you have to suffer here and do this while I'm king of this thing. And Gabby's a bit more just like, I want your voice box. Whereas, yeah, I feel like they're much more like obvious antagonists, whereas Stinky Pete is a bit more of like a. I know he fits with the whole introspection of number two, where it's like Woody kind of confronting himself, and Stinky Pete is like a fragment of that, and so he's not like an overt I'm the villain here until it's like it actually comes to a snapping point and he has to make a decision that's different.
I mean, you've got the Chicken Man as well as the bad guy in number two to
Yeah,
be
he's
the
the
real
Sid.
bad guy. Like,
He steals him. He steals him.
yeah,
What an ass! And he's like, I'll give you 50 cents for this junk. I'm like, who? Oh, who is that Pobo at a garage sale, man?
How do you
So they go
guys?
steal him for thousands of dollars.
Yeah, jeez.
How did you guys feel about Buzz's arc? Like, the problem I had with watching it again is the first movie, Buzz doesn't know he's a toy, so he's acting like a space ranger. In the second one, he gets replaced by a toy and he's acting like a space ranger. The third one, he gets reset and is acting like a space ranger. And it's not till the fourth one we get something a bit different from him. Do you guys agree with that, or?
I do love Buzz's whole thing with his inner voice in number 4.
It's
I
great.
find that,
It's
I
really
find
good.
that hilarious. I said as like a it's because Alicia and I, my wife and I, watched it last night, and we were watching it, and we were like, man, this is really like being a parent. This film, it's like it's a symbolism for being a parent. And Woody, and when Buzz started listening to his inner voice, I was like, yeah, and Buzz is the dad, and Woody's the mum. Buzz is just like, attack now, go, and he's like, all right then, whatever, and just jumps out the window. And I'm like, yeah, no, I relate to that. So, yep. But
Yeah,
no, I agree. It does sort of go down that whole path each film, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's just something that really
The third
struck
one
me
does
is
have
that
the Spanish Buzz.
True.
I do think his arc gets the most like it's sort of the most underdeveloped in the later films as well. He doesn't really.
Mm.
Whereas he is he has a huge arc in the first one. He doesn't do much. He just becomes part of the gang in the second, third, and fourth. And even though obviously it becomes a great like him and Woody are just really good friends, it does feel a little bit I don't know, at a loss for them to be like to no longer have that. And he just kind of tags along. He does a lot for the plot, but he doesn't have any growth really until the fourth one, and that kind of bums me out a bit more.
So, do we have someone in particular to blame for the second one being the worst?
Father Time. Oh wait, no, that's an answer for the first one. Never mind.
It
Because,
is.
no,
It is.
we are going with the second one. I don't know. I find Jessie annoying in the second one. That's one of my major points. I think they subdued her a lot in 3 and 4. 3, she still has a big role to play, I feel like, but she's not as loud and just like in your face and everything. I don't like number 2 how, I don't know, Woody seems to just sort of be like, okay, no, well, I will go with these guys and abandon Andy when that's his whole character point. And it is even in the next one, he's like, I can't abandon Andy, like I need to follow him wherever he goes. While in this one, he's like, okay, well, no, Jesse has a sad story, so I'll go with these guys to Japan and live in a box. And
Woody does turn very quickly in number 2.
Have you guys seen the Oh, sorry, you go, and then I've got a tidbit, but continue.
So I think, yeah, I don't know, just the characters are a bit weaker in number 2, I feel like, while in the others, number 1's definitely, like I said, I've got some issues with number 1 compared to the 3 and 4, but there's definitely a lot of good scenes in number 1, and the characters are great, and like Conan was saying, it's still one of the most memorable in terms of lines and everything like that, while 2 doesn't have as many, I feel.
Have you guys seen that sort of theory that they all the films all correspond with like ages of growing up, and so number 2 is kind of like the teenage years where you're a lot more egotistical, you're a lot more sort of quick to be like, screw you guys, you don't understand me. And so this whole like he turns quickly, it's sort of yes, but there is sort of it kind of speaks to that theory and like the idea of his narcissism where he's in that teenage year, he's like he's been more resentful of his family, he's not the center of attention anymore, he's sort of rebelling, trying to figure out who he is, and then he finds out he's got this whole identity and this whole culture that could just love him. And so I think when you look at it,
star of the show,
exactly, or the star, he's the star of his own story, which is what we're all searching for in life. And so with that, it's like I think his turn really fits where he's already. There's a lot implied that in between 1 and 2, obviously he's been on the wane and his connection is waning with Andy. And so for that to happen, I think that overlaps really well with that teenage theory of teenage kid runs away from home. He's like, screw my parents, I'm joining the circus. And like teenage Woody goes and is adored by children forever.
Yeah, I guess I can see that, and I do definitely agree with that theory. Like it fits so well with all the films, like you said, Luke. Fourth one being about parenting in a lot of ways. Like these movies grew up with us.
It's almost so obvious. Like it's Andy says, like, you watch these kids grow up and then they leave you and you don't know what they're doing. And it is just, it's going to make me cry.
I mean, Pixar they did that obviously with like Monsters University, sort of when that came out, that generation was going to university. And so it's like, okay, they're clearly appealing to that sort of sense of things. And even Finding Dory's kind of like trying to map that over with a bit more, with sort of different life stages of their products rather. I would just blame the Disney group who would be, I don't know what the process is behind making direct to DVD sequels, but I assume that it is like a lower budget, lower resources, and just kind of like, hey, can you guys churn this out faster? So I would assume that the culture there would be different to being like, we're making a major motion picture. And so that would have been why Toy Story 2 feels lacking compared to the other three.
But it ended up getting a big budget. Like, it was made into a proper feature film, obviously. But I still feel like you can see the trappings of it being a small film.
I think the bones would have been there and they would have made it better.
The seeds from where they...
For the garden metaphor.
Do you guys want to hear some stats?
Please.
Yes.
Stat corner. So,
Stats.
I feel like box office gross for trilogies is really weird because the first film's always the lowest, which is the case here for Toy Story, 191 million. Toy Story 2, 245 million. And then Toy Story 3 and 4 making over 400 million. So trilogies just grow, which is obviously why they're why film studios love making them so much. And then if we go to our favorite, Rotten Tomatoes, number 1 and 2, 100%. Number 3, 98. Number 4, 97. It's insanely close. Metacritic has them at 95, 88, 92, and 84, respectively.
See, that I would almost... I mean, just more reason why Rotten Tomatoes is full of crap and no one should ever use it for anything. Metacritic, I can get a bit more behind. Like, I don't know if I'd say Toy Story 1's my favorite, but I think that's a sound argument to say for its place in time and history. It's like,
absolutely. Yep.
Yeah, like if they review it back then, and that's what they're going to do. So
exactly.
Yeah.
Actually, I have other questions that I want to throw in, but I don't know where to put it. So
yeah, I've got lots of questions about these movies too, but let's do them at the end.
All right.
Have you guys got a quick fix for number 2? How do we get this out of the straight to DVD style and move it into the blockbuster it should be?
Make the song, the middle song, When She Loved Me, make that 40 minutes long. And then I'm there. I'm invested.
Everyone will die of dehydration from crying too much.
But you would remember that, right? And you tell your friends, you guys have got to see this. It is a death wish.
Quick question about like the songs in these films. I didn't do much research. They're written for these films, aren't they?
They're all
like the majority of them
written for these films. Yep.
Yeah, because some of them they're just describing the scene, and I was like, man, that fits really, really well. And I'm like, that's so. But it sounds like they sound good, and the music's so good in these and iconic. Like you hear Randy Newman, and you're like, Toy Story.
Yeah, I think
really
the music stands out the most in the first one. Like that, You've Got a Friend in Me is just
and just as soon as the theme starts playing, like the start of You Got a Friend in Me, like the actual tune itself starts playing at the start of all these films. It's great. Yeah. You see the blue sky with the clouds, which is what I love. Like with number 3, how it ends on that, but in real life, not Andy's wall. It's like the great outdoors, and then 4 ends with a night sky with a moon. So.
It's true. It does.
Good observation.
I do think that the music is strongest in the first one. Like you've got Buzz Lightyear's that song when he's trying to fly out the window. Really, I can't remember what it's called. Really heart wrenching, and like those are the two that really stand out. But I think the music's definitely stands out the most in the first than any other.
Well,
except for
that probably falls into the fact Disney really, really wanted the first Toy Story to be a musical.
Oh, did they?
So I think they were pushing hard for it to be a musical. Yeah, and you watch that scene with Buzz wanting to go out the window, and that's like the one that comes to my mind when I'm saying it describes the scene. It is very much like that. So I can see why that would happen, and then it does go away from that as it goes on.
Yeah, even strange things are happening. It's like literally about strange things happening. So it does. Yeah, you're right. It does follow the framework.
All right, which film wins? Let's just skip to it. It's too hard to fix a very, very good film. How do you?
It's the same problem we've had with the last 2 podcasts. They're all great films, and it was so hard to pick. And it's not the worst one. It's just the one, that stands out.
It's the lacking.
So I'll speak my piece first. For me, it's number 3, like Toy Story 3 to me is like similar to Return of the King. It's the perfect end of a trilogy as far as I'm concerned. I absolutely adore some of the stuff they do at daycare. I find it hilarious. The scene with Buzz shutting his helmet as the kids open the door when he senses stuff's gone wrong. Toys are hiding, and he's all happy and he's looking around and he's like, something's not right. And then as soon as the kids bite over the door, you just see these shield pop down. It just cracks me up every time. It's so good, and it's pure horror watching the kids beat the crap out of those toys and Buzz just getting like banged over and over again as a hammer on stuff, and just seeing like the pain in their like lifeless eyes, the toys' dead eyes, were like, what is happening to me? My tail's being shoved up my kid's nose, and it's great. Like there's so many things like that. I really like Lotso as a villain. I just think like his performance, everything about it, I love his story. Even his story, I know you said it's sort of cliche and you know he's going to be a villain. I don't think his is necessarily like a heel turn where it is a shock where he like, no, I'm a villain. You get that, you know, you sort of know that there's something going on here that you know, more than meets the eye. But I really like his story, how he gets replaced, and he does, you know, walk all the way back to get there. It's heartbreaking, and then he pulls everyone down with him and creates the Joker, you know, how to geek Mr. Giggles, and the baby, which the baby's horrifying, like in the scenes. The
These
monkey
movies just do an outstanding job at creepy.
The monkey's terrifying, man. The monkey's eyes as he's just sitting there on alert gives me anxiety. It's a prison break film, and I love that. The whole prison break sequence where they're trying to get out is fantastic, and I think it has the best third like act with the furnace and everything going on. That there's so many emotions that happen with that, and then it's a perfect ending, getting handed over to Bonnie, and every time Woody and Andy separate at the end, I can't help. I bawl my eyes out every single time I watch it. It speaks.
So we are okay with the blatant Dose Machina of the claw pulling them out of that furnace.
Yeah, see, that's what I don't love about the end of 3. It's a little too convenient, and it's a little too, I don't know what the word is, but it's a little too world-ending. Like it's a very apocalyptic ending that looks like they're going to have, like they're getting dropped into this furnace. There's no coming back from this, and then, oh look, here's the claw to save us.
A literal, like, god machine, a foreign being we don't understand, saving them with a giant mechanical claw.
I mean, it makes sense in the world. It's not like it's a claw that's just out in the middle of a forest somewhere. It makes sense that it will work in that environment, and it is a great callback to the first one with the aliens operating it. They, you know, depart 10 minutes early, like, oh, the claw, and they, you know, go over that way. I do get it. It is sort of like oh my god, this is super intense. Oh, they're rescued. Like it doesn't have like this great payoff where something else happens to interfere with it or anything like that. But
yeah, I do kind of look past it because it has that, like, it plays back on that from the first one. So they've sort of foreshadowed it in a way, and it is such an emotionally satisfying, where it's like these toys come to a place of acceptance, and then it's like I can make peace with it because they stick the landing so well. But I do have a bit of an issue. I'm like, yeah, it is a literal claw out of the air to save them.
Yep.
And then poor Lotso gets tied onto the front of a truck.
Yeah, like
it's kind of a cruel and unusual punishment, isn't it?
I want to know, like, is he there for 50 years? Do they perceive time the same as us?
Yeah,
because that's.
I mean, those other ones
a human rights violation
for a while, and they
toys' rights.
Yeah, but he's a really bad man. Like he kept having chances to redeem himself. He kept having chances to redeem himself, and then he was willing to murder a bunch of people. He's just got to eat flies for the rest of his eternity. He doesn't die. He's just going to be there forever.
Yeah,
that's horrifying. Truly horrifying.
That's hell. He's gone. They send him to hell. They literally send him to hell.
Oh man, I have so many questions that I won't get into.
Conan, are you agreeing that 3 is the best?
Yeah, 3 is the best. I think it's probably the hot take. No, it's a hot take on this podcast. I definitely enjoyed it the most. I remember seeing it at the cinema and being like, holy crap, I didn't think I could actually enjoy a third in a franchise that I didn't know needed a third as much as this. Like, I didn't expect them to be able to do it so well, but it pays off everything. It completes it really well. they really know what they're sort of doing with the story. Like the opening scene of 3 is so good because it's like the literal. It's like commenting almost on they do the whole sort of Andy's reenactment of like these weird things from the first one, but they do it properly how it's perceived in his imagination. So it's almost this little nod of like, hey, look, now that we have the technology to do this, we can do this. And so it's this great way of saying like, hey, this is the same Toy Story you love that you grew up with, but it's improved in these areas. We're dealing with this stuff. We've got these new characters who come in. And so it's a really nice way to set the tone and show what it's going for. And it changes up the genre enough. Like it becomes a Prison Break film rather than just the model the first or second. And then the fourth one does that again by making it a road trip film. But they do everything they need to make it fresh, to make it different, but to make it the same. Like it never loses sort of anything of what Toy Story is. And I think it works in every way. Like there's not really anything wrong with Toy Story 3 except that arguable ending.
I'll happily go with you guys on 3, but I do want to put the argument out there for 4. To me,
I
really, really enjoyed 4. It's the first time I'd actually watched it for watching these, and I thought it was the funniest Toy Story movie, like by far. Like it is. Had me cackling. I think I really enjoyed Gabby Gabby as a bad guy, and the whole creepy antique store and the dummies. Like that was just super, super creepy. Like I know there's creepy parts in the other films too, but I just really enjoyed that. I think I really enjoyed the new characters. They added like the Key and Peele, two creatures joined onto each other. They were so funny, and like their ideas on how they're going to get the key.
You can't be serious. How are we supposed to do that?
Okay, you know what? Leave that to us.
We know exactly what to do.
Oh, where did you two come from?
Well, we're not doing that.
Yeah, I agree. Too visible.
That's a good point. Something more subtle.
Ooh, what about winner chicken dinner?
Yes.
That whole scene was just
hilarious. I was cracking up at it. And then at the end, like, they go into the old lady's house and it just keeps going and going and going.
Yeah.
Oh, I love it.
Yep, so good. I think this was my favorite Buzz, like my favorite arc for him, like listening to his inner voice. Like I just thought that was really entertaining.
I think I have to go.
Where are you going? Why?
We all go? Are we going?
No time to explain. Attack!
No time to explain.
Oh, no! Okay, what is with everyone jumping out the window?
Really enjoyable, really funny. I think it was, to me, the best interaction of the toys with the adults, with the whole GPS in the car. Like, they're all a little bit unbelievable, but like the first one is just them crawling out of the sand and spooking Sid, and then they do it in other places. But I don't know, I really enjoyed that whole sequence. But I'm happy to agree that it's a Woody movie. It's not really a Toy Story movie. It does lack a lot in that way. But I enjoyed the payoff at the end as well. Woody getting some closure and going with Bo Peep, I think, was lovely, and that had me sad too.
I will say, like, 4 would be a close second for me. And I think the main difference between them, you could easily make the case that 4 is the best movie of them. I think 3 is the best when you have an emotional connection to it, because it does have that thing, and you don't have that. And 4 is you just watch for the first time. And as a film, I think it is easy to make that argument that it is the best. I really enjoy Woody in number 4. I like his whole growth of what he's going through, where he's like, no, this little fork, what's his name? Forky, isn't it? It's just Forky, yeah. Is so important to Bonnie. Like, that's my job. Like, she doesn't want to play with me anymore, out of any of the toys. She doesn't want to play with me anymore, but I want to make sure she's happy, and like, I watch her, like him going to kindergarten with her is such a heartwarming scene, and helping her make Forky's whole existential crisis about being trash. We've all gone through that. Like, we've all gone through that phase, you know.
I'm still going through it right now.
You know, I'm trash. It's very relatable. I do like the whole thing with the GPS system and messing with the RV. Like, Bonnie's poor dad, they're going to send him to jail just to fit their agenda.
Dad's going to jail.
But I love it that he's like, oh, and yeah, the dinosaur says that, like, he's going to go to jail. This is great. I love everything in the antique store. I think, man, I tear up at Gabby Gabby's whole storyline. Like, when she does get rejected, it's heartbreaking, and
Yeah,
then
that
when
is
she
a
does
gut
find
punch.
the little girl that's lost, like that's also heartwarming, but also very brings tears on. And I do really like Woody's arc, and like you said, Buzz Lightyear's arc with this, and the return of Bo Peep. She's this badass that's been out on the road and she's lived this wild
sass.
life, and it's great compared to where she was in the first one. And even apparently
she had a fling with Keanu Reeves.
Exactly.
She's living the dream.
She but apparently she wasn't even meant, like, Bo Peep wasn't in the first one. That was Barbie, but was written to be Barbie. But then the makers of Barbie didn't want her in there for some reason. But then they changed their mind when they saw how much money Toy Story made. But like, Bo Peep's coming back is great, and she has this thing, and I do enjoy the ending where it ends up with Buzz and all that. I don't know. I love Buzz and Woody so much that I had this weird thing where I was like, oh, that's their goodbye. Like, I feel like with the RV quickly leaving, and they're like, oh, quick, we got to go. Like, Forky's here, we got to jump off. I didn't get like the big emotional
they
farewell
definitely cut
with
it
those
short.
two. And that's what I was upset. I was like, oh, they're separated and they're probably gone forever. Who knows? But I was going to say, so what is your opinion of Duke Kaboom?
I thought he was a good character.
As much
as I love Keanu, I don't think he's the best actor.
No. Keanu is the movie star lacking the acting prowess. Like, he's great. He's great
star, and I love him.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, he's all the reasons you think of Brad Pitt and Tom Cruise. It's like this guy has this charisma and this swagger about him, and there's something about him that makes him special. But as just like basing him purely as an actor, he's lacking a lot of things. Like, he's kind of like Arnold Schwarzenegger in a way, where like his physicality does half of his work. Like John Wick, he's actually a character because he's almost not acting. He's just this physical beast moving through worlds, destroying things.
It's
just
the
like
choreography. Like, it's just
and it's like
exact same as Arnie. Yeah,
but it's his thing weird. Whereas in Terminator, is like best example. Arnie's just kind of this creature, and it's like that's where he primes. Whereas when they bring in emotion, he's kind of lacking. So Duke Kaboom's really funny though. I like him.
I think he's really funny, and his little arc with his history with the kid and not quite living up to what he saw on TV. He's so relatable as well. Like, he didn't get a toy.
It's a commercial. See, all of that I kind of like that Keanu's like understated acting does actually fit to it, where it's like, I don't know, there's something so charming about him playing that, where it's like you can tell he's actually almost putting on all the emotion in his voice and stuff. And I'm like, it just brings a real magic to Duke Kaboom's whole character, where it's like he's a showman. He acts this up.
It's nearly the right casting as well. There, I do agree. I think.
I do love when he makes the final jump, and it's just like the long pan out, and then just his helmet just ding, like smacks the circle as he goes through it. And he's like, "Yes, I did it." It's good.
Yeah,
so good.
Like, Luke, speaking of what you were saying, like about Woody and Buzz and their dynamic being so great, I think that's where 4 really falls apart, is that it separates these two groups, and you have like an A plot and a B plot, and Woody's plot is the main one, and then all the rest of the cast and crew that we love are sort of shoehorned into the B plot, and it suffers, I reckon, because Buzz especially functions as him and Woody have a back and forth. They function as kind of like that duo, and so when you have them separated, Buzz isn't the leader of the group, so there's sort of that lacking tension. And Woody kind of benefits from having Buzz there to sort of offset him. And so when you separate them, I think it's to its detriment. And that's where I think that's what really lets 4 down. That and Forky just being a pain in the ass.
Yeah, Forky's not great. Tony Hale's good. And I don't mind. There's definitely a big question about life in this world, but we might get to that shortly. But I'm happy to go with you guys on 3. Like, I love 3. I did see 3 in the cinema, and I remember getting very emotional at the ending. Watching it a second time, I'd be like, oh, that crane's a little convenient, but I'll go with 3 is the best.
I think as well, we need to mention number 3. It has Mr. Tortilla Head, and that is the funniest sequence. The bird pulls him apart, and it's again lots of questions about how do you define Mr. Potato Head? Is he the sum of his parts, or is he, because he's not the potato itself? And so that could keep me awake for weeks.
And then he becomes thin, dark, and handsome.
It's so funny.
He's just his silhouette, like emerging with the little hat on top. And...
that is comedy gold.
It's very, very good. Very, very good.
Do you like Spanish Buzz or?
Bitácora espacial. Me he despertado del hipersueño en un planeta extraño.
Now what did you do?
I just did what you told me.
Estoy rodeado por criaturas extrañas y desconozco sus intenciones. ¿Quién anda ahí? ¿Amigo o enemigo?
Amigos. We're all amigos.
Yeah, I love Smash Bros. Are great.
I like how he feels very like oh, the cowboy. Like he's so dramatic. It's great.
I really enjoy the Barbie and Ken dynamic too. Like I think that was.
I was going to say,
really
I love Ken.
It's really good.
Yeah, it's really
Hi, I'm Ken.
Barbie, have we ever met?
I would have remembered. Love your leg warmers.
Nice ass cut.
really funny.
Ken's whole thing where he's showing off all the outfits and then she just starts ripping them one by one. It's great.
Michael Keaton, just what a man.
Is that Michael Keaton?
That's Michael Keaton, yeah.
Oh,
I know he doesn't sound old, which is kind of he does it really well.
And that's the thing. I love the whole thing in 3 where they're playing cards like in the vending machine and like, oh, what about the new toys? Any keepers there? And they do want to keep Buzz. Like they're like, oh no, he's proved himself. He can stay here. And it sort of doesn't have this whole thing of like, well, no, they have gone through that. They have been beaten up by these toddlers in the caterpillar room and bring in the new toys to do that. But obviously, under Ken's guidance, they do find a much nicer solution at the end. But you can understand sort of like the hierarchy there.
I have a theory that Toy Story 3 is actually a scathing criticism of the American capitalist model. How do you guys feel about that?
Sure.
Okay.
Hear me out. Come on, guys.
The old people get rich. The young people do all the work.
That's exactly right. This idea of you've got to put in a hard work, guys. Just pull yourself up by your bootstraps. And it's like we've all had to do that. Not to mention that it was easier for us when we did it.
Yeah.
If you stop buying avocado toast, you might be able to buy a house.
Exactly. Lotso never bought no avocados.
And look where he is now,
He
strapped to
just
the front of a truck for the rest of eternity.
Yeah,
Do we want to explore some existential questions that are raised by the Toy Story franchise?
We're going to have to at some point.
Absolutely.
All right. What constitutes life? So we have Forky, who is trash. No part of him is a toy, and yet assembling that trash somehow creates life. Is it the love of a child? I don't understand what brings Forky to life.
I'd say it's a combination of the love of a child and the googly eyes. Absolutely.
I actually think I agree with the googly eyes. I think the googly eyes is the secret sauce that
once they slap it on.
Yeah.
No, but that would then imply
is it like? Well, I guess it is like the physical manifestation of the love of a child, but her writing her name on his feet. Is that what then brings him to life? Is that she has deemed him? Oh, I guess no, because some toys don't.
No, that can't work. Yeah, because then all of Toy Story 4 is about toys with no owners, so it's like that can't work.
Yeah, no. But to bring trash into the toy world, maybe that is remarkable.
It does seem to be to do with joy. If this thing can bring joy to a child specifically, if it brings joy to a child's life, thus it becomes a toy. I guess, yeah. When does it end being a toy? Like if you peel Forky apart, does he cease being a toy? Like Mr. Potato Head? Because he's a Mr. Potato Head, though. He's several pieces on one body. And Mr. Potato Head is the pieces. So then Forky could logically be he could just be pipe cleaner, right? And googly eyes. And a broken paddle pop stick.
Maybe. Mm-hmm. It bends my mind.
Maybe it's just life. The kid created him from love. So
that's a lot of power.
It is, man. And kids, we are children's playthings, as Woody says.
Wait, are you talking about us right now, or
just humans, parents in general? Whatever, they have complete control of you.
But what about old people? They don't have their children are old, so I don't think they're the will of children,
aren't they?
No.
All right.
Like it's nightmarish. All right, it's this and Cars. They just bring up so much that I want to know how this works. Like, I think I wrote one down here of like a real question. I couldn't. I have to find it now.
Here we go. Bo Peep is porcelain, right? And yet in number 4, her torso is clearly made of stuffed cloth. Did she break her own legs and sew herself a body to become what she is in number 4?
Gosh, that's a good question.
How is it obvious?
Just have a look at how she's constructed in number 4. And if she's a wholly porcelain character, at some point her legs were broken off and reattached with this cloth body. Did she do that to herself?
So you reckon like she was broken into 4 pieces and then?
I mean, I could see it happening to her. Maybe not doing it to herself.
But maybe the dress was inconvenient, and that was the only way to get rid of it. Break the legs off at the bottom.
I like that idea. Yeah, she's like, this doesn't really work with my life. I've got to literally reinvent myself.
Yeah,
just like takes a swig and put something between her mouth, and she's like, cut me up.
Overcome.
That's Bo Peep's model. I don't know, but I want to know, how long do these toys exist for? Like, if they go to the attic, do they literally stay there in a constant state of consciousness of like, all right, we might be here for 30 years. Let's just get used to it. Because you see them in the first one, they're playing cards, they're amusing themselves, right? They're killing time. So if they get put in the attic and they're happy to stay in the attic, that could be literal years where they stay up there. Like, what does that? Do they not suffer from? Because they also need to have people, right, to sort of recharge. Like, how does that work? Do they not go crazy? Can toys get depressed? Can toys get suicidal?
They do. Hold up. So, like they say when they're going to the attic, like pack your spare batteries and everything. So it seems like some toys need batteries to survive. So why do they need batteries and then normal toys don't, to be toys that are alive? But the battery ones, they'll die if they run out of batteries. Or is that just there?
No, I feel like the batteries thing is like, once someone comes to get us, we want to be working so that they keep us.
Stay relevant, yeah.
Okay, because that was going to open a whole nother can of worms.
It is.
All right.
There's an ultimate power source out there that we could be harnessing, and we're not.
Yeah. It deals with a lot of like deep stuff, and it's really good, like, and profound. Like, especially like the whole thing with parenting is number 4 is like really profound. As a parent, it's 3 itself as well. Like, deals with similar things about growing up and like watching your kid leave and moving on and everything like that. It's a lot of powerful stuff.
Yeah, and like it makes me wonder, like the lack of finality of number 4 kind of. Tell me if this is weird, but the fact that it's kind of like this journey can literally just go on and on and on forever. There's something about that I kind of find unsettling, right? This idea of like you could literally just be in the same state living for the next 1,000 years. Whereas there's something that I find almost freeing about that fact is like, look, we're only here for a stint. We're here for 100 years. There is a finality to this. For whatever belief system you have or anything, there is an end to this. And that sort of gives it meaning, right? Like, by knowing that their time is limited, everything you do and all these things have weight behind them. Whereas these toys just live forever. Like, it's like the vampire's dilemma. That's like an existential thing, right? Where, I don't know, after 600 years, do they transcend this stuff? Do they then no longer need human at all?
Like, are they immortal? Like, do they outlive? Is it basically like Terminator? Do they have to be melted in lava to actually be destroyed? Because
that's what I mean.
That one in number 4, the bunny gets ripped in half by the cat, and he's just chilling in a pub, like, I have no legs. Yeah. My guts are hanging out on the floor. Oh yeah, I saw your better half out there. It's messed up. Like, he's doesn't have his legs. So he just will live on forever. What if it's just his head? If he has his head ripped off, will he just be like, oh man?
Well, in the first one, they have those. They're all chimeric, right? They've all got like the head of the doll on the Meccano legs and the crane on this. So it's like, yeah, they become different creatures again. But then if they get broken up and reassembled to their original parts, would they be the same toys we knew and loved, or would they then be different creatures?
Oh man, I'm going to need some more caffeine. This is going to be a long night. We've got some stuff.
There's so much going on in this.
The other thing that weirded me out, especially at number 4, is that you've got these toys who, they're lost toys, but their goal is still to be played with. There's still some primal urge to be played with.
Don't we all have that?
I don't know. There's something, I don't know, creepy about their urge to be played with all the time. I don't know what it is.
Is it pre-built in from the humans who made them? Like, these toy companies that have made these toys, is it this just constant thing where they have they're in the matrix, they don't know they're being controlled, but they have this constant thing that they need to get back to a human to be played with, to be fulfilled.
So, like, do designer intentions actually affect the toys thing? So if a toy creator is like, this toy will be loved by kids, they'll be bought and enjoy it, the toy has that. Or if the person's like, I created this toy to destroy things, does that then have a different primal need? Is it like, I don't need that anymore?
It seems like they all just want to be played with. Like, that's the primal urge that drives them.
if you translate this over to Marlowe's hierarchy of needs, of like, comes from, you got food and survival right down the bottom. All creatures just sort of, they need that to function. And the higher you get, there's like this need for like spiritual enlightenment. I think you translate it to that, right? It's like the primal human urge to believe in something bigger than ourselves, some sort of spirituality, be it a deity, or be it just a way of life, or be it a ritual you do like yoga. This sort of sense of like the spiritual. That's what their urge is. It's like this gives them meaning. Otherwise, they're complete nihilists, and toys can't be nihilistic.
No, I think it's creepier and more based than that, and I think it's on par with the urge to reproduce that other species have. That's the sense that I get out of this. That they are also deriving some sort of carnal pleasure from being played with like kids.
I mean, they do, isn't it?
Oh, that brings a lot of
when they're played
It's a
with.
weird question, but it really does seem like that in a lot of places.
Like,
getting your
it's
rocks off.
horrifying when they're played with like badly by like the young kids, but their whole thing is like the memories of like when they, being hugged close and like having these like cherished memories of when they're like being chucked around and played with. Like, they get off on that shit. It's
no, because this brings in a whole thing then of like Toy Story 3 is filled with sexual assault, and that is that's a difficult to swallow reading.
I mean, maybe it's just a commentary on Hollywood. Like, I don't know.
Speaking of, I think that's a good segue into something I do want to mention. I think we need a new category, which is Who Screwed Up Now, where every single film seems to have some dirtbag behind the scenes who has since been ousted. And obviously, in this case, it's John Lasseter, who
this week.
This week? Something happened this week? Who are you talking about?
Joss Whedon.
Oh, no, I was talking about John Lasseter.
In the news this week. Oh, well, I don't know about him, but yeah, Joss Whedon this week's coming. But he helped write Toy Story 1. I know that. I don't know if he came in for the other two, but he definitely came in and helped with the writing for number 1. And then
What's he done now? I actually haven't seen this.
A lot of abuse of women, like throughout Buffy, and a lot of like his ex-wife's come out and said that, and other women have come forward about his like abusive behaviour. And
do we have to make this a category?
We do.
It's a really topic, but it's
because
it keeps coming up, man, and it's coming up in Toy Story.
This is what I mean. It's important to say because every film seems to have it. But John Lasseter, who did he was like
John Lasseter.
So he was the director of 1 and 2. I don't think he did 3. No, he didn't do 3. He did 1 and 2. And 2 was like co-directed with someone else. But he was the director, and he was kind of like he was like one of the writers on the first one as well. He's one of the key conceivers. Yeah, exactly. He was kind of like he's the showrunner of this movie, right? And he was sort of notoriously like would just make very inappropriate comments, would touch people inappropriately. It was just like a real all-round scuzzball. I don't know if there's any overt rape allegations specifically, but it was kind of like, I can't think of anyone to compare him to, but like he would make the workplace very unpleasant. He'd make very disgusting comments. Yeah, touch things that he shouldn't be touching.
Super strange because he co-wrote these with his wife. His wife helped out a lot on. These.
Harvey Weinstein had a wife and kids, and
we won't go into this too much. Let's change courses because it's.
But it's worth mentioning.
I think it is like these things bring such joy, and it is just worth noticing. It's like, hey, they're not just pure forces. It's like there was unfortunately this unhealthy thing that was happening, and the guy who did bring such joy was also a. And
I mean, hey, we did say they're the 2 worst ones of the series, so they were him. Let's just hope the directors of 3 and 4 end up being good. So
Lee Unkrich, don't do anything bad.
All right. Anyone else? Anyone got anything else to say about Toy Story before we move
on? Who is the worst character and why is it Rajon?
I mean, we've all been that
jerk kid. No,
I've been that kid, and
you're right.
I've done that. I've been that kid, and it haunts me actually still because I was a jerk to a toy when I was a kid. It was more about being a jerk to the person who gave me the toy, and that's haunted me my whole life.
It's probably the worst.
One of my friends when I was 9 years old bought me sea monkeys, and I really didn't want sea monkeys. And I remember opening it and being like, "Oh, these are stupid. All I got was stupid sea monkeys." And I just remember my friend sitting in the back seat as we were driving him home when I said that to my mum in the front seat, and I just remember him like being all crushed. And it's haunted me forever. And he ended up passing away. and it's haunted me because I never apologized to him.
Oh, God. Right, this is ending on a dark note. Let's lift it up a bit. What's the best song?
You Got a Friend in Me.
You can't beat it. Yeah.
Yeah, you're
but
probably right.
Emily's song in number 2 is fantastic as well.
And We Belong Together is a real banger. Like, you can dance to that song. You can't really dance to You Got a Friend in Me.
It's a slow dance between two bros.
It's two dudes.
And
I'll
just say as well, no, you go.
I was going to say, no, do you have a favourite character? Like a specific toy you think's the best?
Ooh, that's surprisingly hard one that I haven't thought about before. I really like Buzz Lightyear.
Yeah. The one I would probably want to play with the most might be Emperor Zurg. I used to love toys that had guns that shot things.
Yeah,
shot the little yellow balls, man. Zurg's awesome. You know, Zurg. Honestly, I don't know. I have a weird nostalgia thing for Rex. I like just the simplicity of this dinosaur. Mr. Potato Head, I used to play with a Mr. Potato Head all the time. So
I never had anything like those toys. I never had a Mr. Potato Head. Never saw any sort of Space Ranger thing. Never had cowboy toys. Never had dinosaur toys.
My plan,
my childhood.
What's your choice?
To play with, I should know. My favorite character in there is Ham. He's just the most sarcastic. It's just like, yeah, he's great.
Yeah. And he's Dr. Evil Porkchop.
No, the barrel monkeys look kind of fun.
The army men. I love the army men throughout the movies when they're just like when they go AWOL and they're out of there, and just the way they run, like it's and get trod on, and like he's
he gets squashed.
Like, no soldier left behind.
Yeah, they're this elite unit, but they have the most inconvenient walking animation.
Yeah. My whole plan when I became a father was to get my children all of the Toy Story toys and have them play with them for years and then show them the Toy Story movie, and I thought it would blow their mind.
Or scar them emotionally?
But some of them toys are expensive, so it didn't end up happening. But it's a cool idea to do. It would blow a 5-year-old's mind, like, oh my god, look at this movie.
5-year-old minds are blown every other day, though.
Yeah, I know. They're blown by just anything, a booger. But so apparently Billy Crystal was originally penned to be Buzz Lightyear, and he turned it down, and he says it's the biggest career regret of his life. And then he came back to be Mike Wazowski, obviously.
He doesn't strike me as a Buzz Lightyear, though.
No,
he was just
and so that's the thing
for years, right?
Yeah, he was.
Obviously, Tim Allen's been recast. Like he's not Buzz Lightyear anymore in the next one.
But isn't the next one's actually about Buzz Lightyear? It's about the astronaut who inspired the toy.
I think it's based off the show that the toy is based off, so it's still a Buzz Lightyear character.
I don't think it is, because I think he's playing an astronaut who sort of inspired that whole. Yeah, he's playing an astronaut from what I've read. He's not actually playing.
But it's not
the character
live
Buzz
action.
Lightyear. No, but I don't think it's actually
action.
based on like a sci-fi show. I think it's more of like some sort of inspirational astronaut movie.
Buzz Aldrin.
Yeah, maybe it's just a Buzz Aldrin.
Played by Chris Evans.
Biopic.
Yeah.
Combat Carlton is also really funny in number 4, where they keep high-fiving and they just leave the last one to...
Oh, the last one keeps getting left out.
It's really good. All right, boys.
And I love that they also give Woody a high five when he's like, I have a kid. And they're like, you got a kid? All right, man.
Yeah.
When she opens up that Polly Pocket and the tiny little toy jumps around, like, I don't know, it's a good moment.
Oh, yeah, it's funny.
All right, boys. I think we've done Toy Story. What if I told you that I have a trilogy that encompasses our last 3 podcasts into one? It has a cooler character than anyone in the Oceans trilogy. It has a love story that literally spans across decades. And I'm pretty sure there's a scene in there somewhere where a kid plays with a toy. Of course, I'm talking about Terminator.
Of course. That's fitting.
Are you
ready for it?
Is there a scene of something slowly descending into lava?
Yes.
And being destroyed?
Yes, I believe so.
Oh.
I believe so.
Oh, wow. I'm excited by this.
Oh, you're right.
I'm excited by this.
So you've thought this through. All right, good thing we've already started treading on the Arnie as Terminator toes. But...
Yeah, it was convenient that we mentioned Terminator like 3 times in this podcast.
It's a sneak peek.
All right, so we're going to do Terminator 1, 2, and 3. We'll do the first trilogy.
Yeah, the only thing that has a good film in it.
This is going to be really hard. It's going to be really hard to pick which one's the worst of this one. So,
I know. Have you seen Terminator 2? Garbage.
I will not. I will not hear it.
Oh, cool. I'm keen.
All right. Well, join us next week for Terminator. Thank you for listening to The Good, the Bad, and the Worst. Follow us on socials. Give us a rating on iTunes. Subscribe to us. If you have any feedback, we'd love to hear it. And we'll catch you next time.
I'll be back.
To infinity and beyond.